In the summer of 2022, Dr. Zahi Hawass stood at the edge of a newly excavated tunnel, 20 meters beneath the ancient Temple of Taposiris Magna, just west of Alexandria. The legendary Egyptian archaeologist had spent decades searching for the most elusive prize in archaeology. And now, holding a flashlight that cut through 2,000 years of darkness, he believed he might finally be close. This could be the discovery of the century, he whispered to his team, because somewhere in the Egyptian desert lies a tomb that has haunted archaeologists, treasure hunters, and historians for over 2 millennia. A tomb containing not just unimaginable riches, but the remains of the woman who seduced Julius Caesar, captivated Mark Antony, and nearly changed the course of human history. The tomb of Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt. But here's what makes this mystery so incredible. We're not talking about some minor historical figure lost to time. This is Cleopatra, one of the most famous people who ever lived, a woman whose story has inspired countless books, movies, and legends. And yet, despite decades of searching, despite all our modern technology, despite the fact that we know roughly when and where she died, her final resting place remains completely unknown. It's as if the earth simply swallowed her whole. If you're fascinated by ancient mysteries and archaeological discoveries, you're going to love diving deep into this story with me. And if you enjoy this kind of content, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more deep dives into history's greatest unsolved puzzles. So why can't we find Cleopatra? To understand this mystery, we need to go back to August 30th, 30 BCE, to a palace in Alexandria where the last pharaoh of Egypt was about to make a decision that would echo through history. Picture this, the most powerful woman in the ancient world, sitting in her private chambers as Roman soldiers marched through the streets of Alexandria. Cleopatra VII Philopator had ruled Egypt for nearly 3 decades. She had commanded fleets, negotiated with emperors, and controlled the wealth of the ancient world's breadbasket. But now, with her lover Mark Antony dead by his own sword and Octavian's legions at her gates, she faced a choice that would define not just her legacy, but create one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. The ancient sources tell us that Cleopatra chose death over the humiliation of being paraded through Rome as a captive. According to Plutarch, writing over a century later, she tested various poisons on condemned prisoners to find the most painless method. Eventually, she settled on the bite of an asp, a cobra, though modern historians debate whether this detail is romantic fiction or historical fact. What we do know is that on that August day in 30 BCE, Cleopatra died in her palace in Alexandria, and with her death, the Ptolemaic dynasty that had ruled Egypt for 3 centuries came to an end. But here's where the mystery begins. According to the ancient historians, Octavian, soon to become Augustus Caesar, allowed Cleopatra to be buried with proper honors alongside Mark Antony. This wasn't just a gesture of respect, it was politically smart. Cleopatra was still beloved by many Egyptians, and a properly honored burial would help prevent her from becoming a martyr. The Roman historian Cassius Dio specifically mentions that both Cleopatra and Antony were buried in splendid and costly tombs. So far, so good. We have a death, we have a burial, we have contemporary sources confirming both. This should be a solved mystery, except for one small problem. No one has seen these splendid and costly tombs for over 1,500 years. The last credible historical reference to Cleopatra's tomb comes from the 3rd century CE, when the historian Cassius Dio mentioned its existence. After that, nothing. It's as if the tomb simply vanished from history, taking with it not just Cleopatra's remains, but potentially one of the greatest archaeological treasures ever assembled. And we're not talking about a simple burial here. Cleopatra was the richest person in the Mediterranean world. When she met Mark Antony for the first time, she arrived on a golden barge with purple sails, dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, with her servants costumed as cherubs. Her banquets were legendary. She once dissolved a pearl worth millions in modern currency in vinegar and drank it, just to prove a point about wealth. If she was buried with even a fraction of her treasure, we're looking at a tomb that would make Tutankhamun's burial look modest by comparison. But the treasures, incredible as they would be, aren't even the most historically significant aspect of this mystery. Cleopatra's tomb would likely contain scrolls, documents, and records that could revolutionize our understanding of the ancient world. The Ptolemies were Greek Macedonian rulers who maintained detailed records of their reign. Cleopatra herself was highly educated. She spoke at least 9 languages and was the first Ptolemaic ruler in 300 years to bother learning Egyptian. Her tomb might contain everything from diplomatic correspondence with Rome to mathematical treatises, from medical knowledge to astronomical observations. Think about what we could learn. We might finally understand the true nature of her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Were they genuine love affairs or purely political alliances? We could discover details about ancient Egyptian medicine, engineering, and science that have been lost for millennia. We might even find her own writings, giving us the first-person perspective of one of history's most fascinating figures. So where could it be? This is where our story becomes a detective tale spanning 2,000 years. The most obvious place to look would be Alexandria itself. This was Cleopatra's capital, the center of her power, and the city where she died. Ancient Alexandria was one of the most magnificent cities in the world, home to the famous library and the lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders. The royal quarter, where Cleopatra's palace stood, occupied nearly a third of the city. If she was buried with proper honors, logic suggests it would have been somewhere in or near this royal district. But here's the first major problem. Most of ancient Alexandria is underwater. The Mediterranean coast of Egypt is geologically unstable. Over the centuries, a combination of earthquakes, tsunamis, and gradual subsidence has caused large portions of the ancient city to slip beneath the waves. The royal quarter, including Cleopatra's palace, now lies somewhere between 6 and 8 meters underwater in Alexandria's harbor. Since the 1990s, underwater archaeologist Frank Goddio has been systematically mapping the sunken city. His team has discovered incredible artifacts, statues, columns, jewelry, coins, providing a tantalizing glimpse of Alexandria's lost grandeur. They've even found what they believe to be parts of Cleopatra's palace complex. But no tomb. The underwater environment presents unique challenges. Centuries of silt have buried much of the ancient city. Visibility is poor, and the constant movement of water has scattered artifacts across a wide area. Most importantly, organic materials like papyrus scrolls or wooden sarcophagi would have long since decomposed in the saltwater. Even if Cleopatra's tomb is down there, it might be so degraded that we wouldn't recognize it. But what if the tomb isn't underwater? What if it was built somewhere else entirely? This brings us to our second major theory, and to one of the most dedicated archaeologists of our time. Dr. Kathleen Martinez, a Dominican lawyer turned Egyptologist, has spent the last 15 years convinced that Cleopatra is buried at a site called Taposiris Magna, about 50 kilometers west of Alexandria. Martinez's theory is based on a fascinating piece of ancient propaganda. She argues that Cleopatra didn't just see herself as a political leader, but as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis. This wasn't unusual for Ptolemaic rulers. They often associated themselves with Egyptian deities to legitimize their rule over native Egyptians. But Cleopatra took it further than most, actively promoting herself as Isis throughout her reign. If Cleopatra truly believed she was Isis reborn, Martinez argues, then she would have wanted to be buried near Osiris, Isis's husband in Egyptian mythology. And according to some ancient sources, there was a temple to Osiris at Taposiris Magna. The site itself is compelling. Taposiris Magna was a significant religious center in Ptolemaic times, with a large temple complex overlooking Lake Mareotis. It's far enough from Alexandria to have avoided the worst of the coastal destruction, but close enough to have been within Cleopatra's sphere of influence. Most intriguingly, the site has never been thoroughly excavated by modern archaeologists. Since 2005, Martinez and her team have been systematically exploring Taposiris Magna. What they've found has been tantalizing. Coins bearing Cleopatra's image, statues that may represent her and Mark Antony as Isis and Osiris, a tunnel system beneath the main temple that seems to have been deliberately sealed in ancient times. Most recently, they've discovered mummies with golden tongues, a burial practice associated with the need to speak to Osiris in the afterlife. But here's the frustrating thing about archaeology. Fascinating discoveries don't necessarily mean you're looking in the right place. Every coin, every statue, every mummy with a golden tongue could be explained without invoking Cleopatra's presence. Taposiris Magna was an important religious site for centuries. It would naturally have attracted wealthy burials and royal artifacts. Martinez remains convinced, though. In 2022, she announced the discovery of a tunnel beneath the temple that she believes could lead to Cleopatra's burial chamber. The tunnel extends for over 1,300 meters and was clearly an enormous engineering project. If there's a 1% chance that the last queen of Egypt could be buried there, it's my duty to search for her, she told reporters. But not everyone in the archaeological community shares Martinez's optimism. Critics point out that she's been making similar claims for years, and that the evidence, while interesting, remains circumstantial. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities, has publicly stated that he believes Cleopatra was buried in Alexandria, probably underwater, and that the search at Taposiris Magna is unlikely to succeed. This brings us to our third theory, and perhaps the most intriguing one of all. What if Cleopatra's tomb was deliberately hidden? Think about the political situation after her death. Octavian had just defeated his greatest rivals and was on the verge of becoming the first Roman emperor. The last thing he wanted was for Cleopatra's tomb to become a shrine for Egyptian nationalism or a rallying point for future rebellions. At the same time, he couldn't simply desecrate her remains without risking an uprising. Some historians suggest that Octavian might have allowed a public funeral and burial, but then secretly moved Cleopatra's body to a hidden location. This would explain why the tomb disappeared from historical records relatively quickly. The location was known only to a few trusted individuals, and that knowledge died with them. If this theory is correct, Cleopatra could be buried almost anywhere in Egypt. She might be in an unmarked tomb in the Valley of the Kings, disguised among the anonymous burials. She could be in a forgotten chamber beneath one of Alexandria's many ancient buildings. She might even be hidden in plain sight, her identity concealed by false inscriptions or deliberate misdirection. This theory gains some support from what we know about other controversial burials from the period. When Julius Caesar was assassinated, his body was initially buried in the Campus Martius. but was later moved to a secret location to prevent his tomb from becoming a political symbol. If the Romans were willing to do this with Caesar, they might well have done the same with Cleopatra. There's also the question of Mark Antony. The ancient sources tell us that he was buried alongside Cleopatra, but we have no more idea where his tomb is than we do hers. Two of the most famous people in the ancient world, buried together, and both completely lost to history. The coincidence seems almost too great to be accidental. But there's another possibility that we haven't considered yet, one that's both more mundane and potentially more tragic. What if Cleopatra's tomb was found centuries ago, looted and then forgotten? Egypt has a long history of tomb robbing. Even the pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings, buried in hidden tombs with elaborate security measures, were plundered within centuries of their deaths. Cleopatra's tomb, however well hidden, would have been vulnerable to the same fate. During the Islamic conquest of Egypt in the 7th century CE, many ancient monuments were dismantled for building materials. The famous Library of Alexandria was destroyed around this time, and countless other ancient buildings were torn down or repurposed. It's entirely possible that Cleopatra's tomb was discovered and looted during this period, with the robbers having no idea whose burial they were destroying. Even more heartbreaking is the possibility that the tomb was found and plundered by amateur treasure hunters in more recent times. Egypt in the 19th and early 20th centuries was a paradise for antiquities dealers and private collectors. Countless archaeological sites were damaged or destroyed by treasure hunters looking for saleable artifacts. Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's intact tomb in 1922 was remarkable precisely because it was so rare. Most royal tombs had been thoroughly plundered long before professional archaeologists could reach them. If Cleopatra's tomb was found by treasure hunters, the artifacts would have been sold off piecemeal, probably ending up in private collections around the world. The papyrus scrolls, priceless from a historical perspective but worthless to treasure hunters, would likely have been thrown away or allowed to decay. We might already have seen pieces of Cleopatra's burial goods in auction houses or museums, but without proper archaeological context, we'd have no way of knowing their true significance. This scenario is depressingly plausible, but it's not the only possibility. Recent technological advances have opened up new ways of searching for hidden tombs and lost archaeological sites. Ground-penetrating radar can now detect buried structures without excavation. Satellite imagery can reveal subtle changes in vegetation or ground texture that might indicate hidden ruins. LiDAR scanning has revolutionized archaeology in places like Central America, revealing entire lost cities beneath jungle canopies. These same technologies could potentially locate Cleopatra's tomb even if it's been hidden for 2 millennia. Dr. Zahi Hawass has been using some of these techniques in his recent searches around Alexandria. His team has identified several promising locations where ground-penetrating radar has detected buried structures. The tunnel at Taposiris Magna that Dr. Martinez is exploring was first located using similar technology. But technology alone isn't enough. The challenge with searching for Cleopatra's tomb is that we're looking for a needle in a haystack the size of Egypt. Even with the most advanced equipment, archaeologists need some idea of where to look. And after 2,000 years, the landscape has changed dramatically. The Nile Delta, where Alexandria sits, has been constantly shifting and changing. Rivers have altered their courses, lakes have dried up or expanded, and the coastline has moved. What was dry land in Cleopatra's time might now be underwater, and what was once underwater might now be desert. Ancient landmarks that could help guide the search have long since disappeared. There's also the political reality of archaeological work in Egypt. The country has strict laws governing excavation and antiquities export, for good reason given its history of exploitation by foreign archaeologists and treasure hunters. Any search for Cleopatra's tomb requires extensive permits and government oversight. Even promising sites can take years or decades to fully excavate, as Dr. Martinez has discovered at Taposiris Magna. Recent political instability in Egypt has further complicated archaeological work. The Arab Spring of 2011 led to significant disruption of archaeological projects, and some sites were damaged or looted during the unrest. Security concerns have made it difficult for international teams to work in certain areas, particularly in more remote locations where Cleopatra's tomb might be hidden. But despite all these challenges, the search continues, and there are good reasons for optimism. First, our understanding of Ptolemaic Egypt has improved dramatically in recent decades. New papyrus discoveries, underwater archaeology in Alexandria, and careful reanalysis of ancient sources have given us a much clearer picture of Cleopatra's world. We know more about Ptolemaic burial practices, about the layout of ancient Alexandria, and about the political and religious context of Cleopatra's death than previous generations of archaeologists. Second, technological advances are accelerating. Each year brings new tools and techniques that could potentially crack this ancient mystery. Artificial intelligence is beginning to be used to analyze archaeological data and identify patterns that human researchers might miss. Advanced chemical analysis can now extract information from the tiniest traces of organic material. Even if Cleopatra's tomb has been damaged or degraded, we might still be able to identify it definitively. Third, there's renewed international interest and funding for Egyptian archaeology. The success of recent discoveries, like the intact sarcophagi found at Saqqara in 2020, has attracted global attention and investment. Museums and universities around the world are eager to support projects that might yield spectacular discoveries. Most importantly, there are still unexplored areas where Cleopatra could be buried. The underwater portions of Alexandria have barely been touched. The desert around the ancient city contains countless unexcavated sites. Even within Alexandria itself, much of the ancient city lies beneath the modern metropolis, inaccessible to archaeologists, but potentially preserving ancient remains. Recent discoveries have also suggested new places to look. In 2019, archaeologists discovered a vast necropolis at Tuna el Gebel, south of Cairo, containing thousands of mummies and burial artifacts. The site included burials from the Ptolemaic period, demonstrating that important individuals from Cleopatra's era were sometimes buried far from Alexandria. Could there be other such sites that haven't been discovered yet? There's also growing evidence that the Ptolemies used multiple burial sites, depending on political and religious considerations. Cleopatra's ancestors are buried in various locations around Egypt and the Mediterranean. Her tomb might not be where we expect it to be, based on traditional royal burial practices. But perhaps the most compelling reason for optimism is simply the persistence of the archaeologists involved in the search. Dr. Martinez has dedicated her career to finding Cleopatra at Taposiris Magna. Dr. Hawass continues to explore new sites around Alexandria. Underwater archaeologists like Frank Goddio keep mapping and excavating the sunken royal quarter. Each of these researchers brings different expertise and perspectives to the search, increasing the chances that one of them will eventually succeed. And success, when it comes, will be impossible to miss. Cleopatra's tomb won't be a subtle discovery that requires years of analysis to confirm. If archaeologists find the right site, they'll know immediately. The wealth of artifacts, the royal insignia, the inscriptions, the sheer scale of the burial, all of these will announce the discovery to the world. The implications of finding Cleopatra's tomb would extend far beyond archaeology. Tourism to Egypt would explode, bringing billions of dollars in revenue to a country that desperately needs foreign currency. The artifacts and documents discovered in the tomb would require decades of study, potentially rewriting our understanding of the ancient world. And the symbolic impact, the rediscovery of one of history's most famous women after 2 millennia, would capture the global imagination in a way that few archaeological discoveries could match. But there's also a darker possibility that we haven't fully considered. What if Cleopatra's tomb is never found? This might seem unthinkable given our technological capabilities and the resources being devoted to the search. But archaeology is full of tantalizing mysteries that remain unsolved despite decades or even centuries of searching. We still don't know where Alexander the Great is buried, despite him being arguably even more famous than Cleopatra. The exact location of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon remains disputed. Even in Egypt, the tomb of Nefertiti has never been definitively located. If Cleopatra's tomb is underwater and has been completely destroyed by saltwater and time, we may never find recognizable remains. If it was looted in ancient or medieval times, there may be nothing left to discover. If it was hidden so well that 2,000 years of searching haven't revealed it, perhaps it never will be found. This possibility adds urgency to the current searches. Each year that passes brings more development to Alexandria and the surrounding areas. Ancient sites are lost to urban expansion, coastal erosion, and industrial development. If Cleopatra's tomb is in a location that hasn't been searched yet, it might not remain accessible indefinitely. Climate change is also a factor. Rising sea levels threaten coastal archaeological sites throughout the Mediterranean. Changing weather patterns could affect the preservation of artifacts and structures that have survived for millennia. Even if Cleopatra's tomb exists and is findable, it might not remain in good condition for much longer. But let's return to the present and the active searches that might solve this mystery within our lifetimes. At Taposiris Magna, Dr. Martinez and her team are currently exploring the tunnel system beneath the main temple. Recent excavations have revealed that the tunnels are more extensive than originally thought, with multiple chambers and passages that haven't been fully mapped. Ground-penetrating radar suggests there may be sealed chambers deeper underground that could potentially contain royal burials. The discovery of mummies with golden tongues at the site has added credibility to Martinez's theory. This burial practice was specifically associated with the need to communicate with Osiris in the afterlife. Exactly what you'd expect if Cleopatra was buried there as the reincarnation of Isis. While the mummies discovered so far haven't been identified as Cleopatra or Mark Antony, they demonstrate that Taposiris Magna was indeed used for high-status burials during the relevant time period. Martinez has also found coins bearing images of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, suggesting that the site had some connection to the royal couple. While coins alone don't prove that someone is buried at a location, they do indicate that the site was significant during Cleopatra's reign. The most compelling evidence may be architectural. The temple at Taposiris Magna is aligned with certain astronomical phenomena that were important in ancient Egyptian religion. The winter solstice sunrise, visible from the temple's main chamber, was associated with the rebirth of Osiris. If Cleopatra truly believed she was Isis, being buried in a location symbolically connected to her divine husband's rebirth would have been deeply meaningful. Meanwhile, underwater archaeology in Alexandria continues to yield fascinating discoveries. Frank Godio's team has recently discovered what they believe to be a ceremonial barge, possibly used for royal processions. The vessel is decorated with images of Egyptian gods and goddesses, and its size suggests it was built for someone of very high status. Could this be the famous golden barge that Cleopatra used when she first met Mark Antony? More importantly for our search, the underwater excavations have revealed that portions of the ancient royal quarter are better preserved than previously thought. While organic materials like wood and papyrus have long since decomposed, stone structures and metal artifacts remain. If Cleopatra's tomb is underwater, there might still be enough left to identify it definitively. Dr. Hawass, meanwhile, continues to investigate sites around Alexandria using the latest technology. His team recently announced the discovery of several previously unknown burial chambers in the Alexandria area, dating to the Ptolemaic period. While none of these have yielded royal burials yet, they demonstrate that there are still significant archaeological sites in and around the ancient capital waiting to be discovered. Perhaps most intriguingly, Hawass has suggested that Cleopatra's tomb might be hidden beneath one of Alexandria's existing monuments. The city has been continuously occupied for over 2 millennia, with new buildings constructed on top of ancient foundations. Modern Alexandria sits on top of ancient Alexandria, with successive generations building higher and higher above the original ground level. Recent construction projects in Alexandria have occasionally uncovered ancient remains, including mosaics, statues, and burial chambers. Most of these discoveries are made by accident during excavations for modern buildings or infrastructure projects. It's entirely possible that Cleopatra's tomb lies beneath a modern apartment building or shopping center, waiting for the right construction project to reveal it. This possibility highlights one of the most frustrating aspects of the search for Cleopatra's tomb. We might have already been close to it without knowing. How many times have construction workers in Alexandria uncovered ancient stones or pottery shards without realizing their significance? How many potential clues have been destroyed by urban development over the centuries? But technology is increasingly able to see through modern overlays to the ancient structures beneath. Ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive techniques can map buried ruins without excavation. As these technologies become more sophisticated and affordable, it becomes possible to survey larger areas of Alexandria systematically. There's also growing collaboration between archaeologists and urban planners in Alexandria. New construction projects are increasingly required to include archaeological surveys, and developers are becoming more aware of the potential historical significance of their sites. While this doesn't solve the mystery of Cleopatra's tomb, it does increase the chances that future discoveries will be properly documented and studied. The search for Cleopatra has also benefited from renewed Egyptian interest in their ancient heritage. For much of the 19th and 20th centuries, archaeology in Egypt was dominated by foreign researchers and institutions. While this brought valuable expertise and resources, it also meant that many discoveries were studied and displayed outside of Egypt. Today, Egyptian archaeologists like Dr. Hawass are leading their own research projects and training new generations of local experts. This shift has brought fresh perspectives to old problems and has made it possible to pursue research questions that might not have interested foreign archaeologists. The search for Cleopatra, with its obvious relevance to Egyptian national identity, has been a particular beneficiary of this trend. The Egyptian government has also recognized the potential economic impact of major archaeological discoveries. Tourism is crucial to Egypt's economy, and spectacular finds like King Tut's tomb or the recent discoveries at Saqqara generate enormous international interest. Finding Cleopatra's tomb would likely create a tourism boom that could last for decades. This economic incentive has led to increased funding and support for archaeological projects, particularly those with the potential for major discoveries. While archaeologists must always balance commercial pressures with scientific rigor, the reality is that well-funded projects can accomplish more than those operating on shoestring budgets. International collaboration is also playing an important role. The search for Cleopatra involves researchers from Egypt, the United States, Europe, and other regions, each bringing different expertise and resources. Modern archaeology is increasingly interdisciplinary, combining traditional excavation techniques with advances in chemistry, physics, computer science, and other fields. For example, recent analysis of mummy wrappings has used DNA sequencing, chemical analysis, and microscopic examination to reveal details about ancient burial practices that would have been impossible to discover just a few decades ago. Similar techniques could potentially identify Cleopatra's remains even if they're found in poor condition or without obvious identifying artifacts. Stable isotope analysis can reveal where someone lived during different periods of their life, based on the chemical composition of their bones and teeth. This technique has been used to trace the movements of ancient individuals across vast distances. If Cleopatra's remains are found, isotope analysis could potentially confirm her identity by matching her chemical signature to what we know about her life in Alexandria and her travels around the Mediterranean. Advanced imaging techniques can also reveal details that aren't visible to the naked eye. Multispectral imaging has been used to read ancient papyri that appeared blank, revealing text that had faded beyond normal visibility. Similar techniques might be able to recover inscriptions or decorations from damaged tomb walls or artifacts. Even artificial intelligence is beginning to play a role in archaeology. Machine learning algorithms can analyze vast amounts of data to identify patterns that human researchers might miss. Artificial intelligence has been used to predict the locations of archaeological sites based on satellite imagery, topography, and other factors. While we're still in the early stages of using AI for archaeological research, these tools might eventually help narrow down the search area for Cleopatra's tomb. But despite all these technological advances, archaeology remains fundamentally a human endeavor. The breakthrough moment, the discovery that solves the mystery, will likely come from the persistence, intuition, and expertise of the archaeologists in the field. Dr. Martinez's dedication to Taposiris Magna, Dr. Hawas's systematic exploration of sites around Alexandria, and the continued mapping of underwater Alexandria all represent the kind of sustained effort that major discoveries require. The search for Cleopatra's tomb also highlights the importance of patience in archaeology. Major discoveries often require years or decades of work, with many false starts and disappointing results along the way. The tomb of Tutankhamun wasn't found until Howard Carter had been searching the Valley of the Kings for several years, and even then, he nearly missed it. Carter later admitted that if he had dug just a few meters in a different direction, he might never have found the tomb entrance. Similar persistence will be required to find Cleopatra. The archaeologists involved in the search know that they might spend their entire careers looking without success. But they also know that the potential reward, both scientific and personal, makes the effort worthwhile. There's also the inspirational aspect of the search itself. The quest for Cleopatra's tomb captures the public imagination in a way that few archaeological projects can match. It combines mystery, adventure, romance, and the promise of incredible treasures. For many people, following the search provides a connection to the ancient world and to the timeless human desire to solve puzzles and uncover hidden truths. This public interest has practical benefits for archaeology as a whole. Media coverage of the search for Cleopatra helps raise awareness of the importance of archaeological research and the need to protect ancient sites. It also helps attract funding and support for archaeological projects that might not otherwise receive attention. Educational programs related to the search have introduced countless students to archaeology, ancient history, and related fields. Some of these students will go on to become the next generation of researchers, potentially including the person who eventually finds Cleopatra's tomb. The search has also highlighted the challenges facing archaeology in the modern world. Political instability, urbanization, climate change, and looting all threaten archaeological sites around the globe. The difficulties faced by researchers looking for Cleopatra's tomb are similar to those encountered by archaeologists working in many other parts of the world. But the search also demonstrates the resilience and adaptability of the archaeological community. When political events made fieldwork impossible, researchers focused on analysis and planning. When traditional excavation techniques reached their limits, new technologies were developed and applied. When funding was scarce, international collaborations were formed to pool resources and expertise. These lessons are applicable far beyond the search for Cleopatra. They represent strategies that can be used to address archaeological challenges anywhere in the world. In this sense, the search for Cleopatra's tomb is contributing to the advancement of archaeology as a whole, regardless of whether the tomb itself is ever found. As we look toward the future, what are the most promising avenues for solving this ancient mystery? The continued excavation at Taposiris Magna remains one of the most exciting possibilities. Dr. Martinez's tunnel system is still being explored, and recent discoveries suggest that there are additional chambers that haven't been investigated yet. If Cleopatra is buried there, the next few years of excavation could provide the answer. The underwater archaeology in Alexandria also continues to yield new discoveries. As techniques for working in marine environments improve, it becomes possible to excavate areas that were previously inaccessible. The royal quarter of ancient Alexandria is vast, and much of it remains unexplored. Technological advances will continue to open up new possibilities. Improved ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and other remote sensing techniques make it possible to survey larger areas more efficiently. As these technologies become more sophisticated, they may be able to detect burial sites that have remained hidden for millennia. Perhaps most importantly, our understanding of Cleopatra's world continues to evolve. New papyrus discoveries, archaeological finds at other Ptolemaic sites, and fresh analysis of ancient sources all contribute to a more complete picture of Cleopatra's life and death. Each new piece of information potentially provides another clue about where she might be buried. The recent discovery of intact mummies at Saqqara, for example, has provided new insights into Ptolemaic burial practices. These discoveries show that royal and elite burials from Cleopatra's era were more elaborate and varied than previously thought. They also demonstrate that important sites from this period are still being discovered, suggesting that Cleopatra's tomb might be in a location that hasn't been considered yet. International collaboration will likely play an increasingly important role. As archaeologists from different countries and institutions work together, they bring diverse perspectives and expertise to the search. Digital communication and data sharing make it possible for researchers around the world to contribute to the effort, even if they can't physically participate in excavations. Public interest and support will continue to be crucial. The search for Cleopatra's tomb requires significant funding and resources, much of which comes from public sources or private donors motivated by public interest. Maintaining awareness of the search and its importance helps ensure continued support for the work. Education and outreach programs also help train the next generation of archaeologists and historians who might eventually solve the mystery. The more people who understand and appreciate the significance of the search, the more likely it is that someone will eventually have the insight or make the discovery that cracks the case. But we should also acknowledge the possibility that Cleopatra's tomb may never be found, or that when it is found, it may not live up to our expectations. 2,000 years is a long time, and many things can happen to even the most carefully preserved burial. The tomb might have been damaged by earthquakes, floods, or other natural disasters. It might have been disturbed by construction projects or other human activities. Even if it's found intact, the organic materials that would provide the most information about Cleopatra's life and death might have decomposed beyond recovery. There's also the possibility that our assumptions about Cleopatra's burial are simply wrong. Perhaps she wasn't buried with great ceremony and treasure. Perhaps her tomb was deliberately modest to avoid attracting attention. Perhaps the ancient sources that describe her burial were mistaken or exaggerated. But even if these pessimistic scenarios prove true, the search for Cleopatra's tomb has already produced valuable results. The underwater archaeology in Alexandria has revealed important information about the ancient city and its harbor. The excavations at Taposiris Magna have uncovered significant religious and burial sites from the Ptolemaic period. The technological innovations developed for the search have applications in archaeological projects around the world. Most importantly, the search has kept Cleopatra's story alive for new generations. Through media coverage, educational programs, and public interest, millions of people have learned about this remarkable woman and her world. Her story continues to inspire and fascinate, demonstrating the enduring power of history to capture the human imagination. In the end, the mystery of Cleopatra's lost tomb represents something larger than just one archaeological puzzle. It embodies our relationship with the past and our desire to understand the people who came before us. It demonstrates both the power and the limitations of our modern technology and methods. It shows how the past continues to influence the present through tourism, education, and cultural identity. Whether Cleopatra's tomb is found next year, next decade, or never at all, the search itself has become part of her legend. The archaeologists who spend their careers looking for her, the technologies developed to aid the search, the debates and theories about where she might be buried, all of these have become part of Cleopatra's story, extending her influence into the modern world. And perhaps that's fitting for a woman who spent her life defying expectations and confounding her enemies. Even in death, Cleopatra continues to elude those who would seek to understand and possess her. The search continues today with renewed vigor and unprecedented resources. Dr. Martinez recently announced that her team has discovered additional chambers beneath Taposiris Magna that show signs of deliberate sealing in ancient times. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed what appears to be a large underground complex that extends far beyond the known temple foundations. "We are now closer than ever to a major discovery," she stated in a recent interview, though she's cautious about making definitive predictions. Meanwhile, the underwater excavations in Alexandria have taken on new urgency as rising sea levels and coastal development threaten to make some areas inaccessible to future research. Frank Godio's team has identified several previously unknown structures in the submerged royal quarter, including what appears to be a large ceremonial complex that could have housed royal tombs. Recent advances in underwater archaeology technology have made it possible to work in deeper water and more challenging conditions than ever before. Remote-operated vehicles equipped with high-resolution cameras and sampling equipment can now explore areas that would have been impossible for human divers to reach safely. These tools have already revealed artifacts and structures that had been hidden beneath centuries of sediment. The Egyptian government has also announced new initiatives to support the search. The Grand Egyptian Museum, scheduled to open near the pyramids of Giza, will include a dedicated wing for Ptolemaic artifacts, with space reserved for discoveries from Cleopatra's tomb should it ever be found. This commitment demonstrates the official recognition of the search's importance to Egypt's cultural heritage and tourism industry. Private funding has also increased significantly in recent years. Tech billionaires and cryptocurrency millionaires have begun supporting archaeological projects as a form of philanthropic investment. Several major donors have specifically expressed interest in funding the search for Cleopatra's tomb, attracted both by the potential for spectacular discoveries and by the global attention such a find would generate. This increased funding has allowed research teams to employ cutting-edge technologies that were previously too expensive for archaeological projects. Satellite-based ground-penetrating radar, quantum magnetometry, and AI-powered analysis of aerial imagery are all being used to identify potential burial sites across Egypt. These tools can detect underground anomalies across vast areas, potentially revealing hidden tombs that traditional survey methods might miss. The search has also benefited from advances in genetic analysis and forensic archaeology. If human remains believed to be Cleopatra are discovered, modern DNA analysis could potentially confirm the identification by comparing genetic markers with those of other Ptolemaic mummies. Recent success in extracting DNA from ancient Egyptian remains has proven that such analysis is possible, even with samples that are over 2,000 years old. Facial reconstruction technology has also advanced dramatically. If Cleopatra's skull is ever found, forensic artists can now create highly accurate reconstructions of ancient faces using digital modeling and 3D printing. This would finally allow us to see what the real Cleopatra looked like, rather than relying on idealized representations from ancient coins and sculptures. The implications of finding Cleopatra's tomb extend far beyond archaeology and tourism. The discovery would likely trigger a renaissance in ancient Egyptian studies, drawing new researchers and funding to the field. Universities around the world would compete to establish new programs in Ptolemaic studies. Publishers would rush to produce new books about Cleopatra and her world. Hollywood would inevitably produce new movies and television series based on the discoveries. More importantly, the tomb could fundamentally change our understanding of the ancient world. Cleopatra lived at a crucial moment in history, when the Roman Republic was transforming into the Roman Empire and when Greek civilization was blending with Roman and Egyptian cultures. Documents from her tomb could provide unprecedented insights into this pivotal period. We might finally learn the truth about her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Were these purely political alliances, or were there genuine emotional connections? Letters or diary entries from the tomb could provide the personal perspective that's missing from the official histories written by Roman authors who had political reasons to portray Cleopatra in particular ways. The tomb might also contain scientific and mathematical works that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient knowledge. The Library of Alexandria was one of the great centers of learning in the ancient world, and Cleopatra, as its patron, would have had access to works that have been lost for centuries. Mathematical treatises, astronomical observations, medical knowledge, and technological innovations might all be preserved in her burial chamber. Recent analysis of other Ptolemaic tombs has shown that royal burials often included extensive libraries of papyrus scrolls. These weren't just religious texts, but practical manuals, historical records, and scientific works that the deceased might need in the afterlife. If this pattern holds true for Cleopatra's tomb, the discovery could be as significant for the history of science and literature as it would be for archaeology. But perhaps the most profound impact would be symbolic. Cleopatra has become an icon of female power and intelligence, a symbol of resistance against imperial domination, and a representation of the meeting between East and West. Finding her tomb would be like recovering a lost piece of human heritage, restoring to the world one of its most remarkable historical figures. The discovery would also have important implications for Egypt's modern identity and economy. Tourism to Egypt has struggled in recent years due to political instability and security concerns, but a find of this magnitude could reinvigorate the industry overnight. The precedent set by the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, which drew visitors to Egypt for decades, suggests that Cleopatra's tomb could provide sustainable economic benefits for generations. International media coverage would be unprecedented. In our connected world, news of the discovery would spread instantly across social media platforms, generating global interest on a scale that wasn't possible during earlier archaeological discoveries. The tomb's excavation could be live-streamed, allowing millions of people around the world to witness history being uncovered in real time. Educational opportunities would be enormous. Virtual reality technology could eventually allow students anywhere in the world to visit Cleopatra's tomb and explore its contents. Digital archives of the artifacts and documents found in the tomb could be made available to researchers globally, democratizing access to these precious historical resources. The discovery would also likely inspire a new generation of archaeologists, historians, and scientists. Just as the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb inspired Howard Carter's generation, finding Cleopatra could motivate young people to pursue careers in archaeology and related fields. This human capital would be invaluable for future archaeological research and cultural preservation efforts. But the search continues to face significant challenges. Political instability in the Middle East affects all archaeological work in the region. Economic pressures in Egypt sometimes conflict with the need to preserve archaeological sites. Urban development in Alexandria continues to threaten potential archaeological areas. Climate change poses increasing risks to coastal sites and could make some areas inaccessible to future research. There are also ethical questions about the search itself. Some scholars argue that the focus on finding spectacular tombs and treasures distracts from more mundane but equally important archaeological work. Others question whether it's appropriate to disturb ancient burials for the sake of modern curiosity, even burials as historically significant as Cleopatra's. These concerns are balanced against the genuine scientific and cultural value of the potential discovery. Cleopatra's tomb wouldn't just be a collection of golden artifacts, it would be a time capsule from one of history's most important periods. The knowledge gained from studying the tomb could benefit humanity's understanding of its own past, with implications for everything from ancient medicine to political science. The international nature of the search also raises questions about cultural ownership and the display of artifacts. Egypt has become increasingly assertive about keeping important archaeological discoveries within the country, a position that has broad support but can complicate international collaborative research. If Cleopatra's tomb is found, negotiations about how the artifacts are studied and displayed could be as complex as the excavation itself. Despite these challenges, the momentum behind the search continues to grow. Recent technological advances have made previously impossible searches feasible. Increased funding from both governmental and private sources has provided resources that earlier generations of archaeologists could only dream of. Most importantly, the dedication of the researchers involved shows no signs of waning. Dr. Martinez, now in her 60s, has stated that she plans to continue the search at Taposiris Magna for as long as her health permits. Cleopatra is here, she insists. I can feel her presence. We just need to keep digging. Her team has mapped more tunnels beneath the temple complex and believes they are close to finding sealed burial chambers. Dr. Hawass, despite officially retiring from his government position, continues to lead excavations around Alexandria. He recently announced plans for a comprehensive survey of the ancient city, using the latest ground-penetrating radar technology. We will find her, he declares. It's not a question of if, but when. The underwater archaeology teams have also expanded their operations. New funding has allowed for longer field seasons and more sophisticated equipment. Recent sonar surveys have identified dozens of previously unknown structures beneath Alexandria's harbor, each of which could potentially be related to Cleopatra's burial. International collaboration continues to strengthen. Universities from around the world have established partnerships with Egyptian institutions to support the search. This global network of researchers brings diverse expertise and perspectives to the effort, increasing the chances of success. The search has also benefited from crowdsourcing and citizen science initiatives. Satellite imagery analysis, which was once limited to professional researchers, can now be performed by volunteers using online platforms. Thousands of people around the world are helping to identify potential archaeological sites by examining high-resolution satellite photos of Egypt. Social media has created new communities of amateur Egyptologists and archaeology enthusiasts who follow the search closely and sometimes contribute valuable insights. While professional archaeologists must carefully evaluate suggestions from non-experts, the democratization of information and analysis tools means that the next breakthrough could come from an unexpected source. Recent developments in artificial intelligence and machine learning have opened up new possibilities for archaeological research. AI systems can now analyze vast amounts of data to identify patterns that human researchers might miss. These tools are being used to predict where ancient sites might be located based on topography, geology, and other factors. Machine learning algorithms have been trained to recognize the signatures of buried structures in satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar data. While these systems are still being refined, they show promise for identifying potential excavation sites more efficiently than traditional survey methods. The combination of human expertise and artificial intelligence could be the key to finally solving the mystery of Cleopatra's tomb. As these technologies continue to improve, they may be able to detect subtle clues that have been overlooked for centuries. But technology alone won't solve the mystery. The breakthrough will ultimately come from the persistence, intuition, and expertise of the archaeologists in the field. The search for Cleopatra's tomb is as much about human dedication as it is about technological innovation. The story of this search has become part of Cleopatra's legend itself. The archaeologists who dedicate their careers to finding her, the technologies developed for the search, the international collaborations formed in pursuit of the discovery. All of these elements add new chapters to a story that began over 2,000 years ago. In many ways, the search embodies the same qualities that made Cleopatra herself so remarkable. Intelligence, persistence, international cooperation, and the willingness to take risks in pursuit of something extraordinary. Whether the tomb is found tomorrow or remains hidden for another millennium, the search itself has become a testament to human curiosity and determination. The mystery of Cleopatra's lost tomb remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved puzzles. But with each passing year, new technologies, new discoveries, and new insights bring us closer to an answer. The dedicated researchers working in Egypt's desert heat and diving in Alexandria's murky harbor are not just searching for ancient treasure, they're pursuing one of history's most compelling mysteries. Somewhere in Egypt, beneath the sand or beneath the waves, the last pharaoh of Egypt waits to be found. When that moment comes, and most archaeologists believe it will come, the discovery will captivate the world and add a new chapter to the eternal story of Cleopatra VII, the woman who defied Rome, captured the imagination of history, and continues to elude us even in death. Until then, the search continues, driven by the tantalizing possibility that the next excavation, the next tunnel, the next underwater survey might finally solve archaeology's most famous mystery. The tomb of Cleopatra remains out there, waiting for the right combination of technology, persistence, and luck to bring it back into the light after 2 millennia in darkness. If you enjoyed diving deep into this incredible mystery with me, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. It helps the algorithm know that people want more content like this. And if you're fascinated by archaeological mysteries and want to explore more unsolved puzzles from the ancient world, consider subscribing to the channel. There are so many incredible stories still waiting to be told, and your support helps me continue bringing these deep dives into history's greatest mysteries right to you.